morning.
Good morning.
Excited? Just wanted to tell a story about how Talon Clemons and I, John Hart, met, and about our friendship, mentorship, relationship. And it starts years before Talon and I ever met. I had a good friend by the name of Soanes, and we started bowling together, over a decade ago, and we bowled pretty much at least once a week in league, and we practiced together, and we went to tournaments together, we went to nationals together, and we were good friends for summer, winter league. I spent a minimum of 3 hours a week with him, and maximum of like 12 hours a week with him. And as of, 2022 summer, we were bowling Friday nights, and he kept complaining of having back pain, upper back pain. And he said it was just stress from work, and he dealt with it before, but over the weeks we got concerned, and we encouraged him to go see a doctor, but he's like, no, how men can be just putting it off as being nothing. Well, eventually, like in middle of October, he finally was there on a Friday night, and we warmed up for league, and he threw his second ball in the first game, and he said, I can't do this anymore. And he was literally right. He never threw another ball after that. Turned out, and I didn't find this out until months later because he just sort of went quiet on me, he had cancer that was ravaging his body, metastasized to most of his body. And one of the things that he and I had done on Friday nights after league would be to hang around and bowl 6 games, just practice, work on whatever. I'd gotten out of that habit since Glenn was on the bench. What I thought, getting healed up, figured he'd be back at the, new year after the holidays or whatever. But that turned out not to be the case. So eventually I'm just sort of like, I knew he was in bad shape, but I decided, I'm not going to let that stop me, and I wanted to bowl one night after league on a Friday night. And the odd thing is the manager normally would put us on the low end of the house with the normal house lights on, but he was in a mood and he wanted to shut that side down, so he forced me to go on the high side of the house with the glow bowl, and he only gave me a single lane instead of a pair. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I dealt with it. And I'm there bowling next to 2 young couples on my left. I'm on what lane? Lane 17? No, 16. And not thinking anything of it. They're doing their thing, I'm doing mine. And when I'm focused on practice, I'm just like, get the ball, wait for my turn, throw the ball. About halfway through, I was only going to do 3 games with the lights, making me dizzy or whatever. When this young man came and started bowling next to me, and I tunnel vision a little bit. I'm practicing, he's doing his thing, and I could see he was a 2-handed bowler, and he was throwing hard, and no evaluation on my part. I just let him do his thing. But as the end of my second game came up, he started just chatting to me, a couple questions here and there, and I answered them, and ultimately I got to the end of my third game, and he was like talking about league and wanted to get involved in league, and he'd always come on a Friday. It was always jammed up with league bowlers. You have to wait till the night, late, and da-da-da-da-da. And so, having talked to him for literally 5 minutes, 10 minutes max, I'm like, well, what are you doing next Friday night? I need a sub. He's like, really? And so, it's like, yeah. And he's like, okay. We exchanged phone numbers, and I told him where to be and when to be there. And over the course of the week, he's texting me, making sure of this and that, sanctioning and all that kind of stuff, trying to get more info. And I'm like, well, first I was like, well, maybe he shows up, maybe he doesn't. But once he started texting me, I'm like, he's showing up. I'm pretty sure. So I've literally not had a conversation with him of any depth. But that Friday comes, he's there, and he's eager and ready to go. And since that day, we have bowled together basically every week, with a couple of breaks in there when I was out of the area. But I mean, so for basically more than a year and a half now, this was January of 2023, and right now I'm recording this in August of 2024. Within a couple weeks of having met him and watching him bowl, and he was literally never coached by anybody. He had developed whatever skill he had on his own, watching YouTube videos, and then trying to replicate what he was seeing there. And I could see that he was an athlete. He was really an athlete. Had great balance, good timing, and great spirit towards the game and towards trying to learn everything he could. And he was malleable too. And he was scoring well for someone that had never gone through juniors, had never done high school, had never had the opportunity to go to college. And I was like, within, a few weeks of us bowling together, I'm like, you should go to a regional PBA tour. And I literally signed him up for a regional PBA event in Buffalo, New York. We live near Philadelphia. And it turned out that as of that tournament date, he would not have had enough games in the USBC to qualify. He would have had 27 games and he needed 30 with the 200 average or better. And it's like, so we had to scrap that. Got our money back, regrouped. We bowled sport shot over the summer together. Then we bowled league again. And this year, we started bowling. I started entering him in regional tournaments. And it's been an amazing progression for him. And I've been emphasizing the fact that house shot is a delusion. It tricks you into thinking you're better than you are. He agrees. He understands that. He's passionate about the game. And, the progression of his events was really, to me, remarkable in that his first one, his eyes are wide and it's like, the bright lights and all of that. So he's getting used to the environment, how, the two pair courtesy or one pair courtesy works, and all these, people that have been bowling on the tour or the regional tour for a while, excuse me. He did the way you would expect. He didn't do the greatest, but he had some really good moments. In his second event, we went up to Buffalo. That was the one we didn't go to the year prior. And his first game, he did really great. But then he ended up, Jacob Buttriff, it was a wraparound kind of situation, ended up on the pair next to him. And I think he got a little starstruck, and that kind of threw him off his game. But he still did pretty well. Didn't get in the money or anything. The third one, he was in Hershey, and my wife came to watch, and his friends of his family, his uncle and his aunt and their son came to watch. So he had the pressure of people watching over his shoulder, and he advanced. He did even better. He was finally, the first few tournaments he was minus. This one he was finally plus. Now, it was a very high scoring event, so he was still middle of the field. But then came the fourth tournament, and that was in York on the bear pattern. And we went out there for Friday practice on the pattern, and he was befuddled. If in 2 hours of practice he threw 12 strikes, I would be shocked to count that many. And when we left, he was actually rather dejected to a degree, concerned. And I just let him process it in his head, and we talked about ball choice and with a strategy for the next day. And we got there in the morning. He still was not super optimistic, but he was going to do it. He was going to, engage in it. He turned around, and his first game he struggled a bit, but then he started to get it. And I was looking at the other scores on the other lanes, and nobody was really killing it. We did, actually, he was on a great group of bowlers on our pair. Two of the people that were on our pair made it to the second day, and one of them ended up in second place, the other one ended up in fifth place for the tournament. So he had, and I've always said this, you bowl better when you bowl better bowlers. And I think that that sort of bears out my observation. I mean, it really helped him with his focus and, interest in fitting in, if nothing else. Not that he really has to worry about that because he fits in. He's definitely a bowler. I mean, he's definitely going to be great, I think. I'm sure. Anyway, he ends up being plus 66 for the 8 games. And he ends up in 20th place of the tournament. And a lot of people who were there who were much, much more experienced were having a really difficult time with this. He beat several people that have been on the national telecast. And if he had simply made like 5 or 6 spares, he probably would have snuck into 12th and been made it to the second day of play. There were simple spares too, and that's part of the reason that I really wanted to have him go to this camp, was to work on things around spare making and just general gameplay and anything. I'm not a coach, but I bowled and I've been around good bowlers and I understand my game, I understand Talon's game, and I thought it'd be a good experience. And Talon and I are not related in any way other than having met about a year and a half ago. And I am investing in him. I'm paying his entry fee into tournaments. I'm paying to bring him down to this Kegel Training Center camp, travel expenses, and everything else. So I believe in him that much that it's strange if you go into the realm of religion, spirituality, or just pure cosmic coincidences. But I would never have met Talon, at least not in the way Talon and I are together, if my friend Glenn hadn't gotten sick and then eventually passed. He died in July of last year. And I made a point of asking Talon to come and actually meet Glenn while he was basically at home, in home hospice, I guess you would call it. And I wanted them to meet. I mean, Glenn was kind of on the end of his days, so his energy wasn't quite where it would have been if it was his normal self. But it was important to me that they meet. So it's like a door closes and another one opens, right? So I'm invested in Talon having an opportunity, and I am all for throwing him in the deep end of the lake at every opportunity, and I know he will swim. And what I tell him is that at this point in his career, his tool bag is probably 20% full, maybe less. He likes to say it's less than that, but whatever. He's still got tons to learn, but he's physically gifted. He's motivated. He studies the game. He seeks out all the information he can. He wants to learn. He's willing to try and modify things. Sometimes it takes a bit for him to get something, but it's not days or months. It's it's not months. It's not even necessarily weeks. It could be days until he goes, oh, okay, now I understand it. But it's a physical thing, and he gets frustrated with himself. And he and I have similar emotional reactions to things. So that's one of the reasons that we get along so well. Is I understand what he's going through emotionally as much as I understand. He understands me. He's stuck up for me a few bowling alley disputes at the league level because people will badmouth me because I'm kind of unusual person, especially on the land because I'm like almost a mechanical man at times. So, but anyway, and this story to me is I've seen Talon level up in video games terms. He just goes and then boom, he has this bump where he just jumps up in ability, and then and then he jumps again, And that's, cashing at the York Regional Tournament this year is just one example of that. And I'm going to do whatever I can to facilitate his continued growth. So I just wanted to get that on the record right now, and I'm going to post this out on my YouTube channel. But I wanted to share that with you. So he and I are not ordinary people, extraordinary in a way. But I expect, it's not that I'm putting pressure on Talon. If he never heard this, if you the viewer were the only person who ever heard this, I expect him to be on the PBA tour. I expect him to make the PBA Hall of Fame. I seriously do. And we've come to be great friends. So I call him my bowling son. Actually, my second bowling son. Don't tell anyone Jason Belmonte is actually my first son. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching.